When I was finishing up my outside projects there with my bonus weather, I detected and found a problem here. What I found is that the fan on here moves. You can see it. You can see it move right there. You look down in there, this fan is moving, and what I found is that the water pump is not leaking, so it's not the water pump. So that rad bearing that holds the fan and is bolted to the water pump is bad. But whether I can get it off without draining the radiator and removing the radiator, I do not know. So that's where we're at right now. So let's get started. First thing we need to do is take this shroud off. I screwed that screw back in there so we don't have parts that are no longer. Now, this nut's on there, so I'm going to screw that back into there and keep it with this part. Don't know if I can get that down in there. Yes, I should be able to. Should be able to get all those nuts off. Belt's off. Yeah, you can see where that's pretty loose. After looking at this really close, I can't get up in there between the radiator and the fan with this guard on. So I have to take this guard off. I've loosened these 3 screws down here, and I got to get these 2 loose now. Broke that bolt off. Once I get this shroud off here, I can fix that. So let's try this one and see if it's going to break off too. Okay, I think that one's going to come out. I think I'll run that back in some and bring it back out. It doesn't look too bad. Now, let's see if we can get that last bolt out back in here. That one looks to be in pretty good shape. Okay, I've taken this shroud off. All the bolts came right out. There's shims on them here. I know where those go. There's 2 for each bolt. The next step of this process is to get this out. This oil cooler. It's a hydraulic oil cooler. We'll try to get that out and just lay it back here. This bolt seems to be coming out. That bolt looks to be in quite good shape. Alright, let's see if we can get this cooler now to move back out of our way enough. Probably a good thing I did this. So far, the one bolt there that I broke is the only bolt I've had any problems with at all. Alright, I got the first bolt out of the fan. I was able to get this guard pushed back. I put a little wedge back here. This is wedged to the fan housing, and I'm able to get these bolts out. I'm doing the old hook the wrench trick here, trying to make sure that I don't over torque these. I don't want to break any of them off. And they do come out in front of the fan, so that's a good thing. That's what I mean by hooking the wrench. Just like that. Let's get this in here and see if we can hook that up and get number 2 out. Okay, that removed. Alrighty. Pretty slow process, but it's going to get me done. And that way, with this wrench backing this up, I'm not torquing this plastic fan. I'm sure that little plastic piece is hundreds of dollars, so we don't need to break that. Number 2, let's see what our position is for 3 and 4 here. If I take both of them out, one of them will rotate on the fan and the fan will drop. So this one I'm going to get loose and leave it in. Just enough thread in there to hold it, and then I'll go down and loosen the 4th one. Yep, the fan's loosening up. I can see it loosening. Without doing anything further. Perfect. And that's the way that goes. Fan looks good. I'll clean that up. Get the belt off and out. Is that this piece here actually runs on the main body arm of the water pump. So the water pump has to come out. Alright, you got a clean bucket, clean funnel. Now we got to get this out. Okay, we won't need to revisit this, so we'll tighten this back up. Alright. These back in and hook them together. Lay them aside. Okay, now this side's stripped. I got one more bolt here, but I'm going to take all this off first. Now I've sprayed this down, this clamp, so let's see if it comes off or not. Now it's been my experience with clamps like this, the best thing to do is to take the bolt out of it. There it goes. This. This piece goes to the radiator, and this piece goes over, and there's a hose hooked to the bottom of the water pump. So I have to take these pieces out in order to get the water pump to come free. So that's what we're going to have to do. So now we got to try and get it off the bottom of the radiator. There we go. I don't want to do anything to the radiator. That's loose. It's loose. Now I believe there's 2 in the back, right here. Okay, there's one. Long one. And that, I think, is it. I have to check everything really close. After not getting too pushy with this, I looked and dug deeper and I found one more bolt. That one. Now, let's see if we can push a little bit and get that to come off. It tells me in the manual to take this thermostat off. After digging a little further, I found out I probably don't even have to take this thermostat off. All I have to do is disconnect this pipe here, and then I think the water pump will come right out. So let's get these off. I just ordered new parts. I'll get what I need, because I'm pretty sure of what I need now. Okay, clamps are off. Let's pop that hose off. Okay, it's off that side. This is one of the ones I ordered. I don't know if I'll need it or not. This hose looks like it's in pretty good shape. So if not, it'll go on the shelf for spare parts. Now, it's time to take the water pump off. So let's get a little wood block there and tap on that, see if we can get that to come out. Because I can definitely clean all this back in here without taking this off. I hope. We'll see if I'm right. And there it comes. There it is. It's out. Now all my clamps seem to be pretty good. I'm pretty happy with all of them. They all seem to be working and they all seem to be fine. These hoses I'm replacing. That one looks pretty bad. This is the one that comes from the water pump here and goes down into this pipe flange. And then there's the pipe flange, and then there's another hose that goes over to the bottom of the radiator. That one I'm replacing, and the top radiator hose I'm replacing. This shaft turns really hard. So there's a bearing pack inside this shaft that this spins on, and it is not good. So this impeller has to be pressed off of the shaft, and this has to be pressed off of the shaft, or this is part of it. I'm not sure yet. No, it all presses out. So there's a shaft inside here that needs to be replaced. That's what's bad, and you can see the play in it. I got to get this cleaned off where the water pump connects. There's some gasket left on here and some stuff, but first, right down in here is where it goes down into the engine. So I need to get that kind of swabbed out a little bit and get some of that antifreeze out, and then I can put a rag down in there and leave the end stick up, and then I can get all this stuff done so none of it falls down into the water jacket of the engine. So let's do that first. Now the important thing will be remembering to take that out before I put the pump in. That's where I wanted it to be right now, so that I can get everything off here and not have to worry about any of it going into the engine. So, all right, let's scrape that gasket off. Now I have an old dull chisel here. It's a wood chisel that I use for this stuff, and I've left it dull because I don't want it to scratch anything. But we'll get this gasket off. It's starting to come. Yep. I think I'm going to spray that and let it soak. Because after I get done spraying this, of course, it's going to have some oil in it. But that's okay, because I can clean this whole surface with alcohol once I'm done. So let's let that soak for a bit. I've let this set overnight with the fluid on it. I sprayed like a penetrating oil on it. So let's see if it's loosened up this gasket material here. Seems like it's coming off easier. I'm going to try this stuff. They're not sponsoring my channel or anything, but I've had really good luck with this in the past, so let's try this. That seems to be helping. You can see that there's a lot of crap coming off there. So hopefully it'll eat through that old gasket material, and there's a little residual here. Let's try it on some of the heavier stuff down here. Boy, it's coming grudgingly. Whatever they used for gasket material on here for the stickum is good stuff. Now if you use these, you got to be really careful, because boy are they sharp. Let's see what we can get done with this. These are usually really good for taking off that last little bit. Now you see that got right under that old gasket material, and I think it's lifting it right off. I don't know how well you can see that, but you can see that that razor blade's lifting that right off. We got almost all of it. There's a piece right here that I haven't at this point been able to get, so let's see if we can come up under that and get it to lift. Yep, but when they're really stuck down like this, usually it's some kind of a product and a razor blade that'll get it done. Now there's a little bit right there. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to coat this with Goo Gone, and then I'm going to come up and wipe it with a dry towel. And that usually takes up the rest of the residue. And then this will be ready for the pump to come in and install. Now you can see that's shining up pretty good. That is looking really quite good. Alright, I'm in the process of cleaning up these clamps. These are the hose clamps for my water pump job on the 91. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting these apart, and they come apart like this. This nut comes off the end like that, and then this screws off. And these are really kind of just dirty, and they need to be cleaned. So that's what I'm in the process of doing right now. Now the reason why I do this, these are really good clamps, and they're very expensive. This clamp is like $4 or $5. So there's no sense in buying new clamps when you can reuse these. If you clean these and reuse these, you can reuse them virtually forever. All these clamps are all clean and ready to go, so I'll put this one with it now. I've got all the parts I need except for my hoses. I'm going to get new hoses. I've got a new pump. It's brand new because I took it to the dealer to have him press this impeller off my old pump. It broke in two pieces. That it almost got there, but then boom. This went from a $54 job to a new pump that was $145 and gasket. So now we're ready to put this new pump in. The first step of this process is, you see I've got this rag down in here to prevent anything from going down in the engine coolant area. So now we're going to remove this and get it out of there. And we need to get it all out. So I'm going to be very careful as I pull this. And that's it. All of it's out. And it goes right there. Now I've got all the old gasket material off this where the pump bolts onto the engine. So now I'm going to wipe all this down with alcohol and get this all ready to go. So let's do that next. Now, as you can see down inside there, that rag sucked all that coolant out. So there's no coolant at the top. So now we're going to wipe this all down with alcohol, so that this gasket will do its job and stick. All right, that looks great. Now I'm going to wipe this pump down with alcohol as well. So I'm going to make sure there's no oil debris on this, that nothing will stop my gasket and the stuff I'm going to put on it from doing its job. So there we are. That looks great. This is the stuff I use. It's called FP Diesel. It was recommended to me by an old timer who sadly is not with us anymore, who sold me a lot of the parts for my 310 dozer. I sealed the rear end of my dozer with this, where you go in and change the brake bands and look at the differential. I never used any gasket on it. I put this on both sides and I bolted it up in sequence, and it's never leaked a drop. This stuff is awesome. Now I'm going to do all this out here. So we are going to apply this FP Diesel on this side Don't worry, this is exactly how it's supposed to look. Now I'm going to take a Q-tip and wipe any of this off. It's down in there where I don't want it. Now you have to wait for this to get a little tacky so you can touch it with your finger and it doesn't come off, and it looks like it's right perfect. So now we will put the gasket in and stick it to it just like that. Then what I'm going to do here is, instead of putting this FP diesel on the inside, I'm going to put it on this gasket around here, let it get tacky, get my bolts cleaned up for the water pump, and then we'll put it in. Alright, it's time to put this in. I've got a little tiny bit of never seize on my bolts, and just like that. Let's get 4 bolts started, and we'll get them hand snug. And these are the long ones that go in the bottom. Tighten these up a little at a time. I can't get any kind of a socket in there or anything, so we're going to tighten these up with our little wrench. And we'll go from end to end here, I'm thinking. Alright. Now, that water pump is on, and I do not believe it will ever leak. Now I got one more job to do here before I can put this radiator cover back on and bolt it all down. What I've decided to do is I'm going to bolt this hydraulic oil cooler back in, and I'll still be able to pull this out. I'll put a wood block behind it. I'll drill this out through here. I'll put this nut and this bolt in it. Putting a little bit of never seize on these bolts. And you can see that this moves, and it needs that. So I either have to drill this nut out or this, and I'm opting to drill here. Alright, I'm going to drill this with a pilot hole first, and then bring it up to size with probably the next bit or the bit after. I put a piece of scrap wood back here so I don't go into my radiator, so let's drill through. Alright, I think that should let it go through. We are through. You can see where I came into my block. I didn't hit my radiator. Alright, I got all these bolts started, and I'm putting them in. These are the ones that hold the fan bracket here to this. This one was a bear to get started. Alright, now it's time to put the fan motor assembly on. The pump is in, everything's right here. That goes on first. Line up with our bottom pulley, which it does. Right there, perfect. I've got to get these bolt holes lined up. I think that one started. Now, believe it or not, I got all 4 of those started. So now it's time to grab our wrench, tighten them up. Alright, those pulleys are lined up perfectly. One thing's nice about this is these bolts aren't any too long. Yep. Alright, the fan is on. Alright, this L bracket goes up in here and attaches back to this radiator to keep it from movement. Now that's going to set the level on this bracket. This will pull up through this bolt and up to the frame. So we got to get this one tight first. Okay, that's tight. Now there's another guard that goes here to this and to this over the fan that we don't have on yet. I can't put that on until I get my hoses on. And I can't put my belt on or my alternator on until I get the hoses on, because that's all in the way. Everything else on this is done. Now we got to put this end frame back on. Oh, wait a minute. We got one more job to do. Now the last job here to do is to get our tank hung back up. That's where the bolt goes. All right. Now this is the overflow, and it was down through this hole right here. All right, I got one in. Okay. Now, the inside one in. Boy, the advantages of being a guitar player for years. I can use my left hand for stuff. Now, I gotta leave those a little bit loose. I gotta put my shims in. All the rest of the parts came from a 91. All the hoses. Got the little guy. So it's time to put all this stuff on. Alright, the first one that goes on is up onto the water pump. It's all the way up where it should be. I am going to put a little dishwashing detergent on that. Sometimes this dishwashing detergent works really good for making things limber. And then it dries up and goes away. And this clamp is in position and needs to be tightened. Now I'm going to just tighten this up a little bit with a screwdriver to get it exactly where I want it. Now I can take my 10mm socket and I can finish it. Okay, that's pulled down good and tight into that. Now I'm going to put a little tiny bit of Dawn dishwashing liquid right here just to start that. Keep it out of the hose as much as I can. Yes, that's what I'm thinking. Fan belt will run around that, so that should work just fine. This bolt right here goes through all this and tightens up. And this threads through, and this is a lock nut. Alright. Now on the other side of this, and we'll get her wound in with a screwdriver. I will keep this for a spare, but I got a new one. And it is here. And this stuff is a great lubricant, but it won't slip once it dries. You can use this on changing tires too. Works pretty good. Okay. Those two are on. This fan belt goes here and here. And I believe it comes up to the alternator there. And it's on the inside of all those. And that is correct. You can use a 5/16 nut driver on this one. And that's nice. Okay. And that's in position great. Okay, that's pushed down into that hose. Awesome. This hose here goes between these two. So let's get the clamps on this. I'm going to run these back a little bit. A little bit of this Dawn, just a smidge, and put it on the outside of those. Okay, that side's on. This side is on. Those two are on. And on the outside here. An old timer taught me that trick, and I've used it. Okay, so this one goes on here. And you see how easy those slip on, but it doesn't get into the coolant. This one goes here. And that's that. That one's in place. Now this one. All should be just fine. Now I'm not going to never seize this because this gets rotated enough that I am going to never seize that. It seems pretty dry and it doesn't seem to want to go in there and spin real well. And that's way better. Alright, it is the right belt. It comes out halfway on this. So now I got to tighten up the bottom of my alternator and get that tight. And then the top. Let's get this tight. Now we don't want to tighten this all the way up. We'll just tighten this a little. Alright. Okay, everything's good. These are all tight now. The belt's on. Everything should be great. Alright, I've got my antifreeze funnel here all ready to go. I've got it wired up so I can hold it with one hand and pour with one hand. This is universal 50-50 antifreeze. It's already got the water in it. We don't have to deal with that. Oop, there it is. It's full. It only took a gallon. Huh. Alright, we have this guard to put on. This is the last piece. I'm not going to put it on right now. I'm going to start the machine first. This guard, if it's in here, is going to kind of impede my view. So we'll put this in after we get done checking everything. So let's get the door open and get this thing fired up. I see nothing leaking here at all. Everything seems to be dry. None of these hoses are leaking down here. Everything looks terrific. I don't see anything leaking at all. I'm going to try and get a look at the back. I don't see anything leaking in here. So now I'm going to let this run warm up and see if I need to add antifreeze to it. I've got this engine up to temperature and I can't find anything leaking anywhere. There's a little tiny bit at the bottom of the radiator, so I'm thinking that it's probably stuff that I spilled, and I've wiped it off a couple times and it keeps coming back a little bit, but I kind of don't think it's leaking. I kind of think it's just residue that from where I ran it over. Everything looks great, and you can see here what happens to that dishwashing detergent. It just dries and goes away. So that stuff works awesome. Anyway, this job is done. So that's how you change a water pump in a KX-91-2 1998 Kubota excavator. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.